Airport security. What's the strangest item you've ever found in a passenger's luggage? Story 1. Working at one of the busiest airports in the US, I've seen some pretty strange things. Here are my top 5. 1. A dead chicken. 2. A dead dog. 3. A bag full of liquor store adult content, the kind of stuff you only see sold at liquor stores. 4. A bag full of adult toys and lube, none of it in packaging or unopened. Seriously, how much do you need? 5. A bag of moldy fruit that stank up the whole checkpoint. The guy acted as if it were normal to allow fruit to ripen beyond consumability in his backpack. It was damn near wine. I'm curious about where this guy lives, where liquor stores sell adult content. I thought liquor stores had to be pretty tight on what they sold, especially since they're government run, at least in Canada. Story 2. As an airport security officer, I've encountered some bizarre and unsettling items in checked baggage. One time, we found commercial fireworks, the kind with mortars that shoot up into the sky and explode. That one required the involvement of the police. Another memorable moment was discovering a skinned goat skull packed on top of someone's clothing. It had missed the plane and sat for a day, causing quite a stench. There was also the time we found poorly sealed jars of rotting blended fish, which must be a delicacy somewhere. The smell was unforgettable. Undeclared firearms are also fairly common. While they don't necessarily pose a danger if packed correctly, there's a right and a wrong way to transport them, and many people seem to ignore the rules. Story 3. My grandmother, at 92 years old, was a petite woman standing about 1.6 meters tall, and always prided herself on being neat and civilized. One day, she was going through airport security when the guards decided to give her bag a thorough check. They ran it through the scanner once, then again, and then called over more security personnel. They pointed at the screen and then back at her bag. One of them finally asked if she had anything illegal in her luggage. Grandmother confidently said no, but they asked if they could search it more thoroughly. They rummaged through her belongings, but couldn't find anything suspicious. They asked her once more if she had a knife or something similar hidden away. After a moment of thought, Granny's eyes lit up with realization. She unzipped a hidden pocket and pulled out a 15-centimeter switchblade. She had completely forgotten about it. She used to carry it when she went to the market with her friends, just in case she needed to carve up some food or, as she jokingly added, for self-defense. The look on the security guards' faces was priceless. Here was this sweet, elderly woman casually pulling out a weapon, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Story 4. This one time, it was me causing the commotion at the airport. I found a taxidermy chicken on a trip and simply had to buy it. The problem arose when I had to get her home. She was too large to fit in my suitcase, so I had no choice but to carry her in my arms. It was an incredibly busy travel day, and everyone seemed grumpy and tired. But the moment people saw me carrying that taxidermy chicken, their moods visibly lifted. The TSA agents had a good laugh, especially when I had to put her through the X-ray machine. Passengers who were previously irritated by the long lines started smiling and chuckling. The chicken became an instant crowd pleaser, turning a mundane travel day into a memorable experience. I absolutely loved the whole situation. 10 out of 10, I would definitely travel with a taxidermy chicken again. Story 5. I was flying back after spending time with my girlfriend in another state. I'm generally anxious and nervous while going through security, and on this particular day, I was also feeling sad about not seeing her for a long while. My emotions were all over the place, and I was feeling a bit weepy. As my bag rolled through the scanner, I noticed one of the security officer's expressions changed to one of concern. She called over another agent to look at the screen, and I thought, "Oh, great, what now?" She asked me, "Do you have a milkshake mixer in your luggage?" For a moment, I was bewildered. I had no idea what a milkshake mixer looked like, but I was pretty sure I didn't have one. Then it hit me. I had my Hitachi magic wand in there. The realization made me feel even more overwhelmed. Embarrassed and already on the verge of tears, I blurted out, "It's a vibrator." At that point, I promptly burst into tears. I was sobbing uncontrollably, overwhelmed by everything, my anxiety, sadness, and now embarrassment. I can only imagine how loud I must have said it. Maybe it was loud enough for the people behind me in line to hear and think, "This is awkward," or perhaps just loud enough for the TSA agents. For the story's sake, I hope I yelled it loud enough for everyone to hear because, looking back, it would be hilarious. perhaps even more entertaining than the taxidermy chicken incident. Story 6. Here's a story from the other side of the security checkpoint as a passenger. I was traveling to visit my now husband for the weekend and didn't want to check a bag, so I only had a carry-on. In my carry-on, I had a big metal butt plug with a tail attached. You can imagine how that looked on the scanner. Everyone could see it on the X-ray. There was a girl in front of me who got her boyfriend's attention, pointed at the screen, and started laughing because she obviously knew what it was. TSA pulled my bag to the side and asked whose it was, so I walked up with a beet red face as the girl laughed even harder. The TSA officer, an older Indian guy, held up my butt plug by the tail and asked, "What is this?" "A butt plug," I replied, my face burning with embarrassment. The TSA agent looked confused and continued to inspect it. Then, holding it by the plug, he smelled it. "What is it?" he asked again. "An intimate toy," I said. "A what?" "An intimate toy, like it goes up my butt." The TSA agent immediately got super embarrassed, put it back in my bag, and covered it with some clothes before sending me on my way. Meanwhile, I was dying inside, and the girl behind me couldn't contain her laughter. Why would the TSA agent smell it? What a weird idea. Like he thought that would help him figure out what it was. Even if it weren't an adult toy, what did he think that would accomplish? He gambled for zero gain and still lost big. Story 7. I used to work at an airport as a line technician, and there was this former baggage screener pre-TSA who once told me about one of the most surreal moments he had ever experienced. He was doing his usual checks, opening bags and scanning for prohibited items when he unzipped one bag and found a human skull. The passenger, who turned out to be a medical doctor, had all the necessary paperwork to transport the skull legally, but still, the sight of it sitting there among the clothes and toiletries was bizarre. Imagine the scene, the bustling noise of the airport, people hurrying to their gates, and right there, amidst it all, a human skull. It's one of those moments that makes you realize just how varied human lives and professions can be. Story 8. I remember those college years vividly, especially the holiday trips back home. Each visit, my mom would lovingly pack my bag with as much food as possible, insisting I take a part of home with me. This tradition always included a generous portion of cheese, sometimes a pound, but often multiple hunks totaling up to 5 pounds. Without fail, I would find myself pulled aside at airport security. The routine was almost comedic, a pat-down followed by curious questions about the contents of my bag. The TSA agents and I would often share a chuckle, with conversations inevitably leading to mothers will be mothers and similar sentiments. One day, during yet another of these routine inspections, I couldn't help but laugh and mention how it seemed to happen every time. The TSA agent, with a knowing smile, explained, "That's probably because that 5-pound cylindrical log of cheese looks exactly like a log of C4. I was stunned. For 2 years, I had been unwittingly carrying around something that looked alarmingly like explosives. No wonder my TSA pre-check had been revoked. It was a bewildering realization, tinged with both amusement and disbelief. Story 9. My brother works as a transportation security officer, TSO, and has seen some peculiar things. He once stopped a guy who had an entire bag full of dead fish. They weren't frozen or on ice, just raw fish in a bag. He also saw a fake dong in a lady's carry-on, which, while unusual, might not be the strangest thing someone has encountered. However, he had a more serious situation when he stopped a woman from bringing a bottle of waters past security. She insisted, "Oh, that's not mine, it's my dog's water." My brother calmly informed her that they sold dog water at the terminals. Story 10. Although I'm not an airport security personnel, I once had an unusual experience as a passenger. I was visiting my grandparents in the Czech Republic and was heading back to France to spend Christmas with my parents. In the Czech Republic, carp is a traditional Christmas dinner, but it's quite hard to find in France, so I decided to buy a whole dead carp and bring it back with me in my backpack. When the security lady checked my bag, she was not impressed to find a large fish inside. However, she let me pass, probably because there were no specific rules against transporting an entire carp on a plane. I could tell she thought it was strange, but she didn't make a fuss about it. Story 11. After nearly 5 years in the service, I've encountered some truly bizarre items passing through airport security. One of the most unforgettable finds was a 4-foot-long wooden carving shaped like a dong, surrounded by smaller ones with legs. The sheer absurdity of the scene made it hard not to laugh. Just a couple of weeks ago, I came across a bag filled with canned chicken. Definitely not the strangest food item I've seen, but unusual nonetheless. Then there was the man with little birds tied to his ankles, a sight that still makes me shake my head in disbelief. Some of the discoveries were far more unsettling. Once we found an adult doll disturbingly resembling a 5-year-old Japanese girl. And every few months, like clockwork, someone would attempt to smuggle an illegal gun, real or fake. The job also brought moments of unexpected grandeur, like when I uncovered 7 kilos of Cuban cigars, a real golden crown, and even a bag of various gemstones valued at around $30,000. One of the most distressing cases involved my officer handling a situation where a drugged baby was found hidden in a duffel bag alongside live grenades. It's these moments that remind me of the unpredictable and often dangerous nature of the work we do. Story 12. My father is a frequent traveler, and one day he was going through airport security in Europe. As he stood by the conveyor belt, he noticed his bag was taking an unusually long time to pass through the X-ray machine. The security personnel seemed puzzled, gathering around the monitor, pointing and gesturing. Finally, one of them approached him and asked, "Are you a mountain climber? We can't figure out what's in your bag, and climbing equipment is our best guess. You have some sort of metal hook in there." My father chuckled, knowing exactly what they were seeing. He wasn't a mountain climber at all. He opened his bag to reveal a metal crane truck toy he had bought for my brother. The intricate metal parts of the toy had looked strange on the X-ray screen. The security staff burst into laughter and asked if they could use a photo of his bag for training purposes. It must have been a slow night, because they all seemed grateful for the bit of humor the situation provided. Story 13. Working in airport security, you come across some truly baffling items. One time, we pulled a bag that contained 2 20-kilogram dumbbells. They couldn't be seen on the X-ray, so we had to search the bag manually. The owner was dumbfounded and didn't see any problem with having such heavy weights above people's heads on a plane that bounces around. And then there was the new girl on the X-ray machine. She pulled a bag for inspection because it contained handcuffs. She took a moment to look at the image more closely before opening the bag and saw the faint outlines of some long, shapely objects with motors at the base. When she asked the guy where he was going, he replied, "To meet my fiancée." She asked him to show the handcuffs to prove that they had safety catches, and then told him he was free to enjoy his weekend. The smirk on that guy's face? Sheesh. Story 14. I've told this story before, but it still cracks me up. I was doing training in North Carolina and went on a work trip. A guy who worked with me was in front of me during the bag scan. They flagged his bag and pulled him to the side, asking if they could go through it. They pulled out a pocket kitty, and my mouth dropped. The TSA agents couldn't figure out what it was. 3 people gathered around it, examining it. Then they looked at him and asked, "What is it?" He didn't say a word. This, of course, led to me busting out laughing. They called a supervisor over who also looked at it. Finally, they told him he could either tell them what it was or they would keep it. He told them to keep it, grabbed his bag, and walked off. I started laughing so hard I had to stomp my feet. We never discussed it again. Story 15. This isn't exactly a TSA story, but it's still quite relevant. About 10 years ago, I flew to Mississippi from Logan Airport in Boston. I didn't have any luggage, so my ex's dad lent me his gym bag for the weekend. When I arrived in Mississippi and got to my hotel room, I began unpacking and discovered a giant box cutter in the inner pocket of the duffel bag. I was shocked and concerned, especially considering I had flown out of the same airport from which the 9/11's terrorists had departed. The box cutter was the same kind of tool the terrorists supposedly used to gain control of the planes. It was a chilling reminder of the importance of thorough security checks. Story 16. One day, at the airport, I was inspecting a passenger's bag when I encountered something truly unexpected. As I unzipped the bag, a live spider crawled out. It wasn't particularly large, but the surprise of seeing it emerge from the luggage made me scream. That wasn't the only unusual item I've come across. There have been bags containing human ashes, homemade fake dongs, the woman who owned them even handed me her business card, a live cat, antlers with rotting flesh still attached, and my favorite, a magician's bag. The magician's bag had set off the explosives alert, so I had to inspect it. As I did, the magician started pulling out various items from hidden pockets, seamlessly transitioning into bits of his act. It was the most entertaining bag check I've ever conducted. Story 17. Back when I worked at a small regional airport pre-9/11, Southwest Airlines had just started operating flights with a $39 promotion from BWI, Baltimore Washington International. One day, I got called over to inspect a suspicious bag. I still remember it vividly. It was a red and black checkered plaid bag with leather corners, an old-school piece of luggage with no ID tags. We decided to open it to see if there was anything inside that could help us identify the owner. I put on some latex gloves and began to unzip the bag. As soon as I did, about 6 cockroaches scurried out, with 2 of them running up my arm. I continued opening the bag and found a small electric hot plate, a beat-up sauce pot, and around 2 pounds of used coffee grounds sprinkled over everything. Oh, and about 50 more cockroaches were inside. It was like a real hobo starter kit. Pretty odd stuff. Story 18. As a child, I always marveled at my father's work travels. He was involved in the medical field, specifically selling instruments related to prostate health. At 8 or 9, I didn't fully grasp the nature of his work, but I knew it had something to do with butts. The most memorable aspect of his job was the props he used. Fake butts mounted on wooden bases. These were demonstration tools, crucial for his sales pitches to doctors, showing them how to use the medical instruments. My dad would frequently travel with these peculiar items, carefully packed in his luggage. Though I never knew exactly how often he was stopped by airport security, I could imagine the confusion and raised eyebrows such an unusual item must have caused. My dad always seemed relieved whenever he talked about the day he got a promotion, a new role that didn't require him to travel with the fake butts anymore. It was a small but significant milestone in our family's shared history of travel and work. Story 19. I was the passenger on this flight, taking a pressure cooker and some spices to my sister, who had left them behind when she moved out of state. To save space, I packed the spices, which were in glass jars with metal lids, inside the pressure cooker. I also found a pair of her earbuds and tossed them in with the spices, making it an easy-to-hand-off package. I wasn't surprised when TSA left a note in my bag, but I was a bit annoyed that they had confiscated my deodorant, which had been in a sealed plastic bag with my other hygiene supplies, completely separate from the pressure cooker. The spices and earbuds made it through, but my deodorant didn't. Story 20. I wasn't part of the TSA, but I worked in a baggage room where bags sat idle until they were run to the plane or transferred. We typically didn't open bags unless they were leaking, vibrating, or devoid of any information and needed rerouting. Properly tagging your baggage is crucial because airline tags, held together by an adhesive strip, can detach if drenched. Trust me, they can get drenched, and some tags are just plain paper and disintegrate easily. One memorable incident involved a guy coming in from Paris with only a backpack. When his bag reached our baggage room, a large red pool of something was leaking out of it. Naturally, our first thought was blood. We put on gloves and slowly opened the bag. Inside, we found canisters of extract and syrup, blueberry, blackberry, raspberry, and strawberry. The strawberry canister had been badly damaged and was leaking all over everything else. To top it off, the guy had packed a ridiculous amount of whipped cream, way more than anyone should stuff into a backpack. He could have bought these things anywhere in the US, but he chose to jam them into a backpack and ship them across the world. When one broke, it created a scene that looked like something out of a horror movie. We all knew better, but for a moment, we half expected to find a head in there. Then there was the time a 5-gallon bucket of something squishy was left on the ramp. The gate called us to come get it. The bucket was bleeding and smelled like barbecue. There was a picture of a pig on the side and everything was in Spanish. We got a friend to translate it, but I forget what it was for. The contents were sponge-like and filled with blood. It was pretty gross and left a lasting impression on all of us. Story 21. Beyond the usual adult toys and surplus store grenades, the range of oddities I've encountered at airport security is staggering. There was the time someone tried to bring through a human skull, surprisingly legal to buy online. Snakes in pantyhose, concealed in someone's pants, were another peculiar find, as was a loaf of bread packed with weed. A garden statue of a hedgehog stood out for its sheer randomness. The creativity of some travelers never ceases to amaze me, like the individual who had 2 crystals wrapped in wires as connected to a motorcycle battery, claiming it could cure cancer. I've seen car parts, including a small engine, checked as luggage, and entire dental office setups, split between checked and carry-on bags. One item that particularly stuck in my mind was an adult toy shaped like a Roman legionnaire sword. Its weight and design were so convincing that, for a moment, I thought it was a real weapon. Then there was the man who, upon finding a crack pipe made from a Coke can and his belongings, started screaming that it was his crack pipe and accused me of framing him. His confidence was so unnerving that, for a brief second, I almost doubted myself. It's a job full of surprises, some amusing, some unsettling, but always memorable. Story 22. I once traveled for business with nothing but my game collection. I had 2 Ziploc gallon bags filled with games for my Game Boy Advance, DS, and PSP, along with the 3 portable systems. My checked luggage contained my clothes and other essentials, but my carry-on was stuffed with video games and consoles. When I went through TSA, they stopped me and started examining my carry-on. They were probably expecting something more serious, but found only hundreds of video games. They called over some other agents, and soon they were all laughing, probably at the sheer absurdity of the situation. I hope they were laughing with me and not at me. After all, I had made their job much easier. There was nothing to search through except games in plastic bags. It was a humorous moment in an otherwise routine day at the airport. Story 23. This one wasn't exactly TSA, but it's a story worth telling. A week after 9/11s, I joined a tour of cats. Adding a new one-way ticket for every leg of the tour into a group of 60-plus people raised quite a few flags. My bags were pulled over and searched in full view of everyone every single time. Back then, for big groups, they did the searches before putting the bags on the belts. We decided to have some fun with it. We placed a gigantic red fake double dong and a bunch of gay adult magazines. Yes, magazines, it was 2001, in one of our suitcases just to see the security agents' reactions. We rotated it through different people's bags to keep it interesting and didn't tell everyone who had the lucky bag. Watching the security personnel's reactions was priceless and gave us all a bit of comic relief during a tense time. Story 24. As a traveler, I once inadvertently took a retractable police club in my carry-on. I had forgotten it was in my bag. When I went through security in Miami, they made a big deal about it and had a bomb specialist check my bag. I got interrogated for quite a while, not in a private room, just off to the side of security. They threatened me with jail, a $5,000 fine, and kept going on and on. Throughout, I calmly insisted, it's not really a weapon. Finally, someone asked why I had the club. I explained that I had been in Colombia and it was for personal security. The officer checked my passport for the Colombia stamp and then gave me a look that seemed to say, why would you go to dangerous Colombia, and why wouldn't you bring a gun? In the end, they offered to give me the club back as long as I checked it. Story 25. One memorable trip, I was flying with an antique 12-inch cast iron skillet with a lid, along with 2 antique oil lamps, complete with iron brackets and mercury glass reflectors. These were family heirlooms, and I had wrapped them meticulously in my sweaters and a long velvet skirt, cushioning everything with socks and bras. My packing skills were impressive, to say the least. When I went through security, I had to explain to the TSA agents that I wasn't planning to use the skillet as a weapon and that the mercury glass reflector was not part of an explosive device. My bras were strewn all over the table as they inspected my carry-on, and I couldn't help but yell, "Be careful with that, it's super fragile." That probably didn't help with my not a bomb plea, but eventually they understood and let me through with my precious cargo intact.